To those joining us virtually. My name is Nombuso Shabalala from Johannesburg Water. I'm joined by our senior leadership team who will speak to various aspects of the Rand water plant maintenance. They will touch on mitigation strategies we have in place, alternative water supply, and other pertinent issues. I will now hand over to our acting Chief Operations Officer, Mr. William Chitsa, who will give opening remarks and then hand over to the first colleague who will give a presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Nombuso. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this our presentation on plans put in place in anticipation of the Rand Water Proactive Maintenance Program. My name is William Chitsa, as introduced earlier on by my colleague there. I'm the Acting Chief Operations Officer for Joburg Water. I've also got colleagues from the office of the COO. And on my left is Mr. Logan Munsami, is the General Manager Operations. On my right is Mr. Joseph Mukwana, who is the Manager for the Water Portfolio in the Program Management Unit. And on the extreme left is Dr. Zach Kuzwayo, who is the Manager for Innovation and Technology. Our first presentation will be from Logan, who is going to give us details of the maintenance and from Rand Water and the Joburg Water interventions thereof. Then I'll also have Victor talking to the planning around the maintenance and the water challenges within the city. I'll have also Joseph talking to the current projects in implementation. We also have Dr. Zek to talk about use of smart technology and the blue drop status of the city. And then in conclusion, Nombuso will give us the communication plan. I'll hand over to Logan just to give us the maintenance and the impact of thereof in terms of the interventions that we need to put in place.
Thank you, Mr. Chitsa. Good morning, listeners, colleagues and residents. I'd like to do a presentation in terms of the planned Rand Water maintenance activities. I will be flagging a few slides explaining the extent of the maintenance activities, the purpose, benefits, and our mitigation plans as Johannesburg Water during these planned maintenance activities. So in terms of the overview, I'm going to touch a little bit on the Rand Water bulk supply system and how it relates and fits into the Joburg Water system. I will further elaborate on the Joburg Water City of Johannesburg bulk supply system, how we receive water into our distribution network and supply to our customers. I'll touch a little later on the actual maintenance activities that's been planned by Rand Water to improve performance of their plant and equipment, the benefits thereof. And to conclude, we'll go through some alternative water supply and mitigation plans that we have Johannesburg Water have put in place to ensure a smooth maintenance activities during this period. So in terms of the Rand Water bulk system, one would notice that Rand Water is the bulk services provider to municipalities, Johannesburg Water being one of them. Rand Water has purification works which extract raw water from the integrated valve system via two purification works, namely the Suikerbos purification works and secondly the Vereniging purification works. If you look at the slides, the Suikerbos purification system consists of a Swart Copies booster pump station as well as the Palmit booster pump station. These two pump stations draw water from the Suikerbos purification works and in turn pump water into the Johannesburg system. So the Swart Copies booster pump station, which is located in the south of Johannesburg, essentially feeds the Joburg Water network and predominantly consists of the Yeoville, Johannesburg CBD, surroundings of Glen Vista, Kibble Park, Naturena, Foresthill and our Parktown reservoirs and systems. In turn, the Palmit booster pump station, this is a slightly larger booster pump station that draws from the Suikerbos purification works. It predominantly feeds our Midrand system, so all the reservoirs towers and pump stations that reside in Midrand, north of Johannesburg, gets supplied of the system. Diepsloot system, as well as the Sandton system. So all your Sandton reservoirs from our Limborough Park reservoir system in the east of Johannesburg right up to Bryanston in the north gets fed off the system. And if we go further southeast of Johannesburg, the Alexander Park and the South Hills system also gets fed off the Palmit system. The other Vereeniging purification system on the Rand Water side further feeds the Eikenhof booster pump station, as well as the Daleside booster pump station. Our Daleside booster pump station essentially feeds our deep south region of Johannesburg Water, mainly consisting of the Ennerdale, Orange Farm, Lawley, Wheelers Farm, Purkey, etc. So the deep south reservoir systems that direct feeds get fed off the Daleside booster pump station from Rand Water. Similarly, the Eikenhof booster pump station, which is a large booster pump station, and that feeds a large component of the Johannesburg water system. Essentially, our Lenasia reservoir systems get fed off this. Our Randburg-Rudeport pump stations, direct feeds, as well as reservoirs, extract water from the Eikenhof. Soweto, all the Soweto systems, including our reservoirs and direct feeds, get fed off Eikenhof. And then in the south of Johannesburg, our Crown Gardens system gets fed off this pump station. And then to the western part of Johannesburg, our Commando system, which consists essentially of the Crosby, Brixton, Hursthill reservoir system, gets fed off the Eikenhof. So you can see the Eikenhof is a fairly large booster pump station that feeds into a great portion of the Joburg water network. The next slide, just to orientate our customers and listeners, the Johannesburg water system, the Swartkoppies pump station, like I mentioned, feeds essentially the Yeovil, our Hector Norris pump station, Forest Hill, Crown Gardens, Eagles Nest, Kibble Park, and a few direct supplies. This is the Johannesburg water system. The Palmit system, this predominantly feeds our South Hills tower, which sits in Rozana Lindmeyer, as well as our Alexander Park reservoir, which sits in the eastern side of Johannesburg, towards Eastgate. Similarly, Linksfield, Sandton, Midrand, Diepsloot, etc., gets fed off the Palmit system. On the Eikenhof, like I mentioned, the various reservoirs in the Joburg water system are the Eriton, the Commando system, which is a Crosby, Brixton, Hursthill, Northcliffe Reservoir Tower and Pump Station draws supply from the same system, as well as our Randburg-Rudeport direct feeds and towers and reservoirs. On the southern section, we're sitting with the Soweto reservoirs, your Brown Fishers, Durinkop, Jabulani, Chewelo, etc. So predominantly our Soweto system gets fed off the same Eikenhof pump station, as well as our Randburg-Linden systems, which goes all the way up to Kensington B. These get supplied off our Eikenhof. So that orientates our customers in terms of the extent of these maintenance activities. I must stress that this activities is not a shutdown. It's not a complete switching off of water into our distribution network. There's various maintenance activities which I'm going to go through that will be performed on various days. And these maintenance activities will result in a reduced flow into the Joburg water system. So what it would mean, there will be flow into the Joburg water system, albeit reduced. In terms of the maintenance activities that Rand Water is undertaking for the duration, the first duration activity or maintenance activity involves Eikenhof, where they intend to interconnect the two Waterval reservoirs, which sits in the western part of Johannesburg. Rand Water has two reservoirs called Waterval 1 and 2. They intend to interconnect these two reservoirs. The reason being is if they interconnect the two, there's more capacity to feed the Joburg water distribution network. That will take place from the 24th of June at 7 in the evening till 27th of June till 7 in the evening, a planned duration of 72 hours. And for this duration, the pumping will be reduced to 50% for 8 hours and 67% for the remaining 64. So one can immediately see this is not a total shutdown. It's a maintenance activity. It's reduced flows, so Rand Water will be able to interconnect Waterval 1 and 2 on this particular plan. The second planned maintenance activity is the cleaning of the rainwater sedimentation tank at the Vereeniging Treatment Works. This will affect the Iconoff system again. Remember, rainwater treats raw water from the valve system, and once the water is treated, they distribute into the Joburg water system. This maintenance activity ensures water quality. It involves cleaning sedimentation tanks at the Vereeniging plant. This will take place also from the 24th of June from 7 to 12th of July at 7, roughly 18 days. And the pumping at Iconoff will be reduced from 83% from the 27th June to 12 July 2024. So yet again, not a total stoppage of water flow. It's going to be reduction of flow into our system via the Iconoff. The third maintenance activity involves replacing a defective valve at the Vereeniging station, the pumping station. It will affect Swartkoppies pump station on the rainwater side. It's planned for the 24th of June at 7 in the evening to 25th of June at 10 in the night. 27 hours total activity. For this 27 hours, what it means that there will be no pumping from our Dale side, from the rainwater Dale side pump station into the Joburg water system. Now, if you can recall from the previous slide, the Dale side feeds our Orange Farm Ennerdale systems. So for that period of time of 4 hours, there will be no pumping for this defective valve to be changed. In addition to that, the Swartkoppies pumping will be reduced to 50% to accommodate this changeover of the valve. So, colleagues, this is a bird's eye view or summary in terms of the rainwater maintenance activities that will be occurring on the various days. And I must stress again, it's not a total shutdown. It is a reduction of flow into the system to allow rainwater to carry out these maintenance activities. To move further on the next slide, one might ask, what are the benefits or the reason for planned maintenance? We operate, as well as rainwater in any municipality, we operate a system consisting of mechanical, electrical, and civil components. These run 24/7. They work hard. Similarly to your car, you cannot use the car past its certain mileage because you need to do certain maintenance activities. Otherwise, it will fail. Similarly, these pump stations, reservoirs, treatment works, pipelines require preventative maintenance. Preventative maintenance, what does it do? It improves the infrastructure availability and reliability. It ensures that the infrastructure functions according to the design, and it's always available to supply consumers with water. It will also reduce the downtime both on the Johannesburg Water and the rainwater system. There will also be a degree of flexibility when maintenance activities happen because plant and equipment are always available to perform their task as and when required. There will be increased capacity on the rainwater waterfall complex when they interconnect the two reservoirs. What it means is when they interconnect the two reservoirs, we'll have more storage capacity to feed into the Joburg system. More storage activity means that our reservoirs and pipelines can remain full more longer. And then there's obviously statutory requirements in terms of SANS 241, water quality, etc., and our service standards. So all of these maintenance activities works towards ensuring a reliable, continuous, fully functional system that will cater for the demands. On the Joburg side as well, improve continuity and reliability of water supply, specifically on our reservoirs, towers, and direct feed areas. So as much as maintenance activities results in certain times inconvenience to residents, the long-term or the medium-term benefits are beneficial to us because it will ensure we have an improved, more efficient system to feed our customers with. Further on, in terms of the Joburg Water Readiness Plan, this covers our mitigation plans. With the reduced flow into the systems, we do anticipate that certain areas might have reduced flow, reduced pressure to no waters, especially in the high-lying areas. We are mitigating using a combination of stationary tanks, what we know as JoJo tanks, to certain key spots in our distribution networks. Those will be filled up as well as supplemented by roaming water tankers or water trucks, which will feed water where required. So these are the various maintenance activities, like I mentioned, and the systems that will be affected. Typically on the Iconof, we must understand that Iconof feeds quite a large portion of our distribution network, namely from our Randburg, Rudeport, parts of central region, going up further to Soweto, and parts of the Lenasia system are fed off Iconof. So in readiness for this maintenance activity, we have put out a plan to mitigate by rolling out water tankers and stationary JoJo tanks, in addition to various other initiatives, which I will talk to shortly. For the SWAT copies essentially affects our central region. So Eagle's Nest, Crown Gardens, Hector Norris Pump Station, which feeds our CBD here in Johannesburg, as well as Berea, Parktown, Forest Hill, all will be impacted by SWAT copies maintenance activities. Similarly, for the SWAT copies and the Dale side, which will affect Orange Farm, Lawley and Ennerdale, we will be deploying a series of stationary water tanks, as well as supplemented by water trucks to the affected areas. For the Palmead system, reduced flow and maintenance activities. On the Palmead system, it feeds quite a large portion of our networks as well. The Palmead system essentially feeds the Midrand Sandton system, as well as the Linksfield, Alexander Park, are all fed off Palmead, including South Hills. During this maintenance activities, we also intend to deploy stationary tankers and water trucks to the affected areas. So the next slide, colleagues, talks to the total number of water tankers or water trucks, as some people know them as, that will be deployed in the system. A total of 85 water trucks will be deployed to the various areas. These water trucks will not necessarily be stationed in central region or the southern regions. They will be moved about amongst the various regions as and when required. So we have the flexibility of moving these water tankers as and when required to the most needed spots. Total of 85 at this stage. I mentioned the JoJo tanks as well. In terms of the JoJo tanks, we intend to deploy 250 JoJo tanks to much needed areas. The JoJo tanks are green stationary tanks. These tanks will be placed at key spots. Some of the key focus area or key spots that we will be putting these JoJo tanks to, that 250 in number, will be mostly in hospitals, clinics, and old age homes. We will focus on schools, police stations, portions of direct feed areas that may be impacted, especially the high-lying areas. Obviously, we've had extensive, and are continuing to have extensive engagements with our councillors and stakeholders. So we will deploy these stationary tanks to much needed areas, and also in consultation with our residents and councillors to ensure that residents have access to water. There's currently ongoing extensive communications to residents and councillors. In fact, as we speak now, there's an engagement that's happening to councillors, and it will continue for the duration of the shutdown and possibly past the shutdown to make sure that we have all the areas restored and have covered those grounds. Something I must mention is we are recommending to residents, as much as we will be deploying water tanking, we're urging residents to store up on reasonable quantities of water. What that means is don't solely rely on the water truck or the JoJo tank for your water. We do understand and appreciate that some residents have medical challenges. They need to take medication. Toilets need water to flush, and also for human consumption. So we're urging residents, as far as practically possible, to store up on reasonable quantities of water. This is not a crisis. There's no need to panic. But for the convenience of having water in your house, we're urging residents to store up water for the duration of the shutdown, as and when required. And having said that, we would prefer if residents do that before the weekend, because the shutdown occurs on the 24th. This weekend is preparation time, or part of our preparation time, to store up or maximize the capacity in our reservoir. So what that means is we are starting to fill up the reservoirs to make sure that they are on top water level, meaning that they are full as possible. So when the shutdown starts on the 24th, we start off the shutdown with a full reservoir. Like I mentioned again, this is not a crisis. It's planned maintenance. This is not a total switching off of water. This is a reduction of water flow into our distribution network, which I've explained. Now, why is it planned during this time of the year? In the water industry, winter months is generally low demand of the system. Because of the colder weather conditions, people tend to consume less water. Same with the beverage industries. The cool drinks are generally consumed more in the hot months, the summer months, and the spring months rather than the winter months. So similarly, certain industries that produce beverages as well, which draws water from our system, the total volume that's consumed of the system is generally lower in winter months. So this is an ideal time to do such maintenance activities on the network rather than during peak summer periods. So colleagues, that's the end of my presentation. I hope that was informative and gave our residents and listeners a perspective in terms of the extent of this maintenance activities. Thank you.
Thank you again. Master of Ceremony, if I can just ask Victor just to talk a bit about around the planning issues around maintenance from the technical perspective. Victor, the floor is yours. Yeah. You want to move over? Yeah.
Yes. Can just swap.
Right. It's coming. It's coming. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm just going to talk about the infrastructure plans that we have for the city of Johannesburg. In terms of infrastructure, the city of Johannesburg has got infrastructure master plans in place, and they are all aligned to the city's growth and development strategy. In these plans, every infrastructure has been analyzed hydraulically in terms of expected performance and capacity. Linked to the rainwater shutdown is the operation boundary limits that we expect at every bulk meter connection for our system to operate optimally. And further in these plans, we've also identified infrastructure that needs to be reinforced, upgraded, extended in the short, medium, and long term, and listed them as projects. And we monitor various factors or signals in the field for implementation timing of projects, of course, within the constraints of available funding. That's the short statement I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. And then I'm going to ask my colleague here, Joseph, just to talk to the current projects that we have, which address some of the challenged areas where we've got shadow in terms of water supply. Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Chitsa. Just going into the presentation mode.
Logan, remove the mic, please.
Sorry.
Okay. Let's sort out the equipments quickly. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chitsa. Good morning to the colleagues, residents, and our listeners. As I've been introduced, my name is Joseph Mukwala. I'll be taking you through the CAPEX intervention as we have them currently. In terms of the reservoir storage and upgrade, Johannesburg Water has a minimum standard of 24 hours of average annual daily demands for reservoir, and for towers we have 4 hours. We have, as Johannesburg Water, we have a total of 95 reservoirs and 34 towers. And we have a combined storage of 1,943 megaliters with an annual average daily demand of 1,621 megaliters per day. which translates into 29 hours of storage. And as I indicated when I opened the presentation, that the minimum standard is that we must have a minimum of 24 hours of storage. Even though our storage is above the minimum standards, there are water districts that are below minimum, such as Bryanston, Hest Hill, Forest Hill, Erand, President Park, water districts. And we have all the interventions in place to accommodate those areas that don't have enough capacity. In terms of medium-term interventions or medium-term measures that we implemented, the first one is the new Crosby Bulk Infrastructure Project, which consists of a pump station, rising main, and an increase on the rainwater supply line. The project has a duration of 18 months, and it's currently at procurement stage, and it's anticipated for construction commencement in September 2024. The second project that I'll be talking to, which is also on the Commando Hest Hill water zone, as alluded by my colleague Logan earlier on, we have Brixton Reservoir Tower and Pump Station project, which consists of a 22 megaliter reservoir, a 1.4 megaliter tower, and a pump station. It has a total construction duration of 18 months, and it's currently under construction, and it has realized construction activities of 43% on as at mid-June 2024, and we anticipate that it will be completed in April 2025. The other project, which is part of our CAPEX intervention, is the Iran Tower construction that is currently being undertaken in the Midrand area, which is a construction of a 2 megaliter water tower and pump station, including all associated pipeworks. The project has a construction duration of 18 months, and it will be completed in May 2025. And in the same water zone, we have the Woodmead Reservoir project, which is construction of a 22 megaliter reservoir, which has currently realized 31% of construction activities, and it's earmarked for completion in July 2025. And we also have the Carlswell Reservoir project, which is a construction of a 20 megaliter reservoir within the Midrand area. It has a construction duration of 18 months, and it's anticipated for commencement in July 2025. And that's it in terms of the CAPEX intervention. And obviously, we have other projects that we are implementing, but we are just touching on high-level critical projects that we are implementing within Johannesburg Water. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. I'll hand over to Dr. Zek, who is going to talk to us about the use of smart technology and the blue drop status as far as Joburg Water is concerned. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, residents, and all who are interested in participating in this forum. Let me project quickly. All right, I'll just do a quick presentation on some of the efforts that Joburg Water has embarked on to try and make life easier for our citizens and ourselves in the realm of delivery. Looking at a couple of aspects of interest, of course, to try and improve systems from our side, as well as to be able to be transparent to the customers. So the first one I'll be looking at is the optimization of water demand management in Johannesburg Water. We're currently in efforts trying to ensure that water demand management is also integrated with the fourth industrial revolution perspective. This meaning, of course, then we'll be able to use water platforms to be able to assist in online systems management, including water pressure and so on. And of course, this requires the integration of the IT and OT systems. I think the audience is more familiar with IT, which is information technology. But of course, we also have operational technology, which is quite important from our side. The difference is that, of course, with IT, they provide the services required to be able to function. But from an OT perspective, we are looking at how we can use tools to better be able to regulate our systems in line, of course, with delivery of water, amongst other aspects. So currently, of course, there is a bit of a division in this, where we are trying to be in the lead, looking at how we can use the systems that are available for IT to try and piggyback on that to allow for operational systems to also be at play. So this is one of the efforts that we are really keen on, and hopefully in the very near future we'll be able to deliver accordingly and be able to improve our services in this regard. The second element, which is quite important, is the functioning within the smart realm. Under this one, of course, I put it as smart device management. When we talk devices, we are talking the meters, we are talking, of course, any tools that the customer requires to be able to track their performance and they track their billing and so on. So the idea, of course, when you looking at smart metering technology, is that we're looking at smart advanced metering infrastructure. This meaning basically that we have centralized systems where we can track, where we can see, and be able to assist accordingly where required to be able to ensure that the customer understands basically what they're paying for with all the tools that we have in place to be able to ensure that, of course, in the end, there's confidence with the elements which are concerned with the customer. So we're trying to be more customer-focused instead of being inwardly focused to ensure that, of course, we work together and the bill payers get closer to the very space where we need confidence to be built in a bilateral position. And of course, we also have automated remote valve restriction systems. This one, of course, might not be popular with the customers since, of course, if you don't pay your bills, we need to find a way to encourage you to do so. So the restriction realm means that basically that if you don't pay your bills, we'll restrict you to the lowest or at least volume available, of course, to encourage you to go to your nearest office and settle your bill. Of course, it's not popular, but it's one of the things we need to do because we are revenue focused. We need your money to keep running the city. Then, of course, some of the aspects which are very important, especially to the lower income groups, basically is how we then can have basic services being monitored and also exactly knowing what's happening on the ground. So we have piloted and developed an app with various stakeholders. This being able to track exactly what it is you have in your household. For instance, if you're living in an informal space, whether you have the water, whether you have the toilets required, whether it's VIP, chem toilet, or otherwise. And of course, we are keen to make sure we go to LOS 2, level of service 2 for most residents, of course, within the informal space. So this has worked out quite well, and in fact, we'll be rolling it out in the future to ensure we're all on the same page. And those in dire need of services in their spaces, especially the informal group, basically then are able to have confidence that the city does care about them, does care about what we're trying to achieve in the long run. But more importantly, we would like to boast a bit more on the quality of delivery. In terms of the Blue Drop report that was done in 2023, Joburg Water, of course by extension the city itself, was the best performing water services authority. And of course we had a score of 98.1%, which is quite good. And of course in Gauteng, we're by far in front. And of course, if I believe correctly, in the country itself, we weren't too far from the leads of the group. And of course, in terms of our water quality, we can boast that both with the Blue Drop as well as other avenues of reporting that Johannesburg has basically the best quality water in the country, both chemically and of course from a microbiological point of view. So these are some of the aspects we're working on, trying to improve the company, trying to improve the water itself, and trying to improve how we perform and better enhance services in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rek. Combs, you want to talk a bit around the communication plan?
Sure. I think Logan touched on that in parallel to this briefing, for example, there's an engagement with ward councillors from the various areas in the city that will be affected. So it's a similar way our technical team gives a presentation to our councillors, and also around the number of water tankers, the position. So that consultation is ongoing with councillors, as they are our key stakeholders that we communicate effectively with customers. I think with that said, we will take questions. We will start with those of the colleagues joining us here, and then thereafter, Nolwazi will check if those joining us virtually have questions. So if there are any questions, we are happy to take them now. Okay, so if you can just introduce yourself and the media house you're presenting in. You can ask your question.
My name is Ingrid Kussi. I am a journalist at Africa. So we spoke to residents of Randburg yesterday. They suffered some water challenges with the first part there on Judges and the public. And they are quite nervous about the impact that the maintenance will have on their water supply, seeing that they're already struggling, but also with what happened in March, where they were without water for 12 days. What measures are you taking to ensure that these residents won't face a similar situation?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's Corinda from Newsroom Africa. My question has somewhat been covered, but just in terms of following this maintenance, are there plans in place to ensure that following that, if anything were to occur where there was an accident in the maintenance process, that there is a project set aside for residents to get water should the maintenance not work out the way you wanted? And then, can you share with the public what this maintenance will actually cost Johannesburg Water or Randburg? Thank you.
So we will, any other questions from, okay. So we will take responses before going to the colleagues joining us virtually. Over to you.
Thank you. I will probably ask Logan to answer the first one and the second one as well. But maybe I can just touch based on the first one, which talks to the pipe burst. We are in an unfortunate situation where, Joburg, city of Johannesburg is in a terrain that is undulating. We've got a lot of hilly areas and so on. So that becomes a nightmare when we provide water. So we've got what we call pressure reducing valves. And one of our challenges is that we've got about 685 PRVs in the system. And some of them were installed quite a while ago. And we're running out of space. And now in terms of procurement, you can't specify that you want a Mercedes part. So that becomes a challenge. So we've got a few procurement challenges that we are trying to go over in terms of procuring space for those PRVs to ensure that the pressures do not exceed the designed pipe capacities. If it is a 36 meter pipe and you give it 70 meters because the PRV is not working, it's going to burst. And that is what we have in some of the places like Randburg and so on. But Logan, you can just reinforce that response and the next one.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you, Inge, for that question. So you're referring to the burst at Judges and Republic. So yes, it is. We experienced some challenges there. As you know, a week ago, the weekend that passed, there was the first burst, and that took a little while to repair. One of the reasons why it took long is Judges and Republic is the lowest point in the network. The line comes from the source end, which is at the Rand Water Waterfall Reservoir. And like I covered in the presentation, that's some of the maintenance activities that they are doing or planning to do as part of this particular exercise to interconnect the two, to make sure that the system is more reliable. But nonetheless, the problem was on our side a week ago, which was repaired. The delay was to get the water off. It's a long length of pipeline. And as we know, we do have, in some cases, especially with steel pipes.
Can you just pause just a little bit? I just want to ask.
I think it's connection.
Yeah. Okay. So just to touch on the reason for the delay on the last week's repair of the weekend, as well as the shutdown we had over last night as well, was because of the water isolation. We have, especially on steel mains and old mains, the integrity of the pipe is not as it should be. That is why that's one of the identified projects that our engineering services unit plans to roll out in the coming year, where they're going to renew a section of the main at Judges and Republic. That's on the table. But the delays were essentially because of valves that could not seal, so we couldn't get the water off at time. The integrity of the pipe in certain cases is compromised, so when you weld, it delays the process because it just spits through the pipe. But nonetheless, my teams worked till 2 o'clock this morning on site. They managed to weld those two sections. They left site about 3:30 this morning, and we started the process of charging the main. So water is slowly coming into the system. We have to do a slow charge because we got to disperse air from the system. If we rush the process, we're going to cause more bursts on the system. Water does not like air in the pipeline because air is like a compressor. The pressure of air is astronomical. It's unbelievable. It'll blow. So that is why we are currently slowly charging the pipe. We anticipate by this evening that we should have most of the flow into the systems coming into the reservoirs. Some of the reservoirs, like the Linden reservoirs, are currently empty. We are supplementing through water tanking. So we expect by this evening the system should start getting in water to the reservoir, and most probably early parts of tomorrow morning we should start normalizing the system. So in terms of the mitigation plans, like I said, we water tanking, we're communicating. We've undertaken the repairs, which was successfully completed this morning. So we should be good to go for the shutdown. In terms of, Corinda, in terms of the delays that could possibly, result, look, we must remember this is a RAN Water initiative, this particular maintenance activity. It's been undertaken by RAN Water and their staff and contractors. But we're part of that process. So we're working very closely with RAN Water. In fact, every morning we have engagements with RAN Water on related operational matters. So we are working very closely with them. So if there should there be any delays, we will know immediately about it. The main thing is we will communicate. And we do have the contingency of having the water tankers and the JoJo stay on site until such time such delays can be dealt with. But at this stage, we do not foresee any delays. But if there is, we will deal with it and communicate accordingly. In terms of the costs, like I said, this is a maintenance activity that's undertaken by RAN Water. They will be best suited to elaborate on the costs and the extent of the financials for this particular projects. On our side, as Joburg Water, our costs are mainly relating to the water tanking because we obviously use service providers to supply water to residents. Thank you.
Sorry, just before we continue, Logan, we just had a bit of a network issue. Please can you just touch back a little bit on the Republican judges burst pipe issue?
Sure. So I'll just summarize the Judges and Republic. I think I said a mouthful. We had a burst on the main line that feeds our Randburg reservoirs. That line traverses Judges and Republic. Repairs were undertaken the weekend prior, the weekend that passed. There were some delays experienced on the job because of, it took a while to get the water off. Welding activities needed to be performed. Pipeline is old, so it made welding a bit more cumbersome, a bit more delayed. So that repair was completed just on Sunday that passed, the previous weekend. However, we picked up a burst at the same spot, a minor burst on the same spot that we had worked on a week ago. The teams worked till 2 o'clock this morning, like I mentioned, to repair that line. There was extensive welding work that needed to be done that has been completed, and the line was starting to be charged at 2 o'clock this morning. As we speak, the system is being slowly charged. There are 2 reservoirs that are currently empty, namely the Linden and Kensington B reservoirs. So residents are affected, certainly, but we have communicated, and there is water tanks that have been deployed to the affected regions. We should be normalizing flow into the reservoirs later this evening. So by tomorrow morning, we should have the reservoir levels at a low level, but being able to feed the area. So that should be fine to prepare us for this weekend shutdown, which starts on the 24th. Thank you.
Okay, we'll now be taking questions from the floor. Rory, I've noted your hand first. If you'd like to unmute yourself. This is Rory McNamara from Plumbing Africa. Hello, Rory? Can you hear us? If you can, Rory, you can maybe just
Unmute.
unmute yourself. Or you can type your question in the chat. We'll move on to Cliff Shigol from Jacaranda News. Cliff, would you like to pose your question? Okay, all right. But we do have a question from the Sowetan, from Nandi, indeed, from the Sowetan, and she'd like to know for you, Dr. Kuzwayo. Nandi says she spoke to residents in Soweto and they were concerned about the purification of the water after the maintenance. They also spoke about their water being brown and not being clean. However, I do think this is something we have to be more specific. We have to get in more. Nandi, if you can, please just elaborate which part of Soweto, street areas if possible, and when was this? I think this is a question we can maybe take after the briefing.
Yeah, I think
Address after the briefing. Yeah.
We need more information to respond to that. We need more information to respond to that.
If we can speak to the purification just in general, then the water will not necessarily be negatively affected by the maintenance. If you want perhaps doctor to speak to that.
Yeah, and I was also thinking one of the questions we normally get is the cleanliness and the safety of the water from the roaming water tankers. If we can speak to that as well.
Yeah, perhaps I can answer this question together with Logan in terms of what the teams do on the ground when there is an interruption and, of course, some kind of maintenance. Just to give assurance from a water quality perspective, when maintenance is taking place, generally the water from source is not affected. It's then from that area of concern going forward where there are issues. And of course, that's where Logan can indicate in terms of what are the causes, in terms of flushing and so on.
Thank you, Doc. So I'll just touch a little bit on the procedures we follow when we drain a main for repairs and charge the main. So essentially, on a water main, it's a pressurized system. So meaning that if the main is pressurized and the water flows under pressure, it's difficult to get ingress into the actual water because it's pressurized. Flow goes outwards. What normally happens is when you have a burst, the pipes are buried below ground level. And, during the repair process, you sometimes get sand and stone that gets lodged in the lines because it becomes muddy when you excavate. And that sometimes get into the lines. But what we do is, when the repair is completed, we flush the lines. You would notice, following certain repairs, there's a whole lot of hydrants that you would see in the street corners that are discharging water. And some people think that we deliberately do that. But we use the hydrants to flush the main of any sand or stones. We also use the same hydrants to flush air out of the system. Because if we don't open that hydrant, the air gets trapped in and then leads to further bursts. So we go through a stringent procedure in terms of flushing the lines. What we often come across is sometimes, the water we supply into older buildings or older residential dwellings, the plumbing is old. So you find that it's old galvanized pipes which are rusted internally. So we might be feeding water which is tested through, stringent standards via our laboratories. We have daily tests that go around in various areas. There's a schedule where we have teams on the ground daily taking samples in various areas to ensure water quality compliance. And that is why you would notice the results of the 2023 Blue Drop in terms of the water quality. So it is stringent, but you do get internal plumbing in lots of cases that are old and defective. So when we charge the system, it dislodges, the water dislodges the rust or whatever's in that old pipes. And when you open the taps, you see this discoloration. We treat it as urgent as well. I mean, we ensure that we don't take these things lightly. So whenever we have such incidents, we need to be made aware of that, so we can send our teams to investigate the causes, test and analyze what is contained in the water, so that we can deal with it best. Thank you.
Our next question, thanks, Logan. Our next question is from Duncan from Written Sanitation. He has two questions. The first one reflects the conversations Duncan has heard from people in his area, and that is, why is the maintenance all at once and not staggered? The second question relates to communications, and he says, Ward 99 has been worried because there was a perceived lack of communications to them in regards to the Judges and Republic water pipe burst. How does the City of Johannesburg or Johannesburg Water plan to go forward with communication, as this maintenance provides a unique opportunity to show improved communication?
Okay, thank you, Duncan. I'll talk to the first part of the question. Why is it not staggered? Look, it is staggered. You would notice from the presentation there's various activities that are happening over various days, although some of them overlap. But we must also understand the interconnection or interconnectivity of such systems. These systems from the Rand Water side and some on Joburg Water side, especially when it comes to the water purification process and the bulk distribution, they're very interconnected. So when you do a shutdown, it might not always be that you're shutting down a certain piece of the plant. Sometimes common outlets of pumping stations require that you shut down the entire pump station. And the same with reservoirs. It has a common outlet, so if you do a shutdown, you interrupt a common outlet which affects large areas. And these processes are interconnection. They're almost like a series configuration, from extraction to purification to storage and distribution. So when you do a shutdown, it might find that we need to do a shutdown on the distribution side. But in order to work on the distribution side or the distribution reservoirs, you need to shut down your pumping, or you need to empty the reservoir bypass. So these systems are interconnected. In some cases, they can be isolated in silos and worked on. In this particular case, some of them are such interconnected that they have to be done in a series configuration, but it is staggered. And don't forget, the time of the year is winter. And like I mentioned, winter in our water industry is generally the preferred time to undertake maintenance activities, because the demand on the network is much lesser than it is in spring and summer. Regarding the communications, my colleague from comms will talk on that, but nonetheless, on the comms side, we certainly have room for improvement. We go through shutdowns, or we go through planned or unplanned maintenance activities almost on a daily basis. There is definitely room for improvement, but my colleagues from communications can touch a bit on that.
I think Duncan is referring to the Judges and Republic matter, which you've touched on. And maybe just to add that, so communication happens at different levels. So for that particular one, it happens with councillors as well. And then we produce daily water notices twice a day. We produce a morning and an afternoon update. But Logan is saying there's definitely room for improvement. So over and above our social media channels, over and above our communication with councillors and our website. And we also have a subscription-based service which is regionalized per area. So we can definitely improve and push that our customers register for that notification service, so that they are informed particularly about any repairs or any updates in their areas. Thanks. Inge has a follow-up question.
Yes, I was going to ask about the water tankers. You mentioned that you only actually have the cost estimate of that Rand Water has the cost of the major maintenance, or So would you be keen to share what the cost of the water trucks, the 85 water trucks, will be? Also, how do you determine which areas require these water trucks or Jojo tanks? Yeah, and then can you please just also give us an update on Thailand? I saw that they also haven't had water for a few days, or low pressure to no water.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Look, in terms of cost of trucks, the prices vary from service provider to service provider. It's normally costed for being an emergency, what we class as an emergency. We have emergency rates and there's normal rates. The normal rates is particularly applicable to, we provide rudimentary services to informal settlements on a daily basis through water tanking. There's a rate for that, but for such maintenance activities or unplanned activities, planned activities, we go off a emergency rate. It'll be difficult for me at this stage to quantify that. I'm not in front of the contract rates, but it is, market related. When we award contracts of such a nature, it is a competitive process. In terms of how do we prioritize the areas, from experience, we know certain areas do get immediately affected when there's a reduced flow or interruption of supply. These are typically your direct feed areas. Direct feed areas mean that the area is not supplied via the outlet of a reservoir. It comes directly from Rand Water Board into the pipelines that feed the customers' meters. So we know, direct feeds, there's a lot of direct feeds in the Rudaport area, in central region. Soweto has certain direct feeds, and so forth. And there's some of our reservoirs that are taken out for planned maintenance activities, for cleaning purposes, for repair purposes. That automatically gets treated as a direct feed because you don't have the bulk storage behind it. So that is what we do from an engineering perspective. But further to that, we have extensive consultation with our stakeholders and our councillors. Like I mentioned, there's a panel meeting happening as we speak. It's one of many meetings. And in our engagements with councillors, because they are also our eyes and ears on the ground, they would also tell us, move trucks to here, or we need a water tank there, and we direct it accordingly. So it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's a well-thought-of process. It's a dynamic process as well, because the distribution of water is a dynamic process. Sometimes you might find that particular area has water, but with a slight reduction in flow, they don't have water. So we have to manage it as and when required, almost on a daily basis around the clock. In terms of Fairlands, a portion of Fairlands gets fed off the line that goes to Judges and Republic. At Judges and Republic, there's a split that goes to Kensington B in the westerly direction, northerly up towards Linden, and then to the southerly direction is Fairlands. Although Fairlands has a reservoir that feeds a portion of it, is a lower lying portions, the upper lying portions of Fairlands also gets affected by this. Thank you.
But I can also add that we've got an annual report that comes up at the end of this financial year, which is end of June. So all the costs are reflected there in the annual report.
Thank you. We have one final question from Rory, Plumbing Africa. However, I do think, Rory, that this is a Rand Water related question because it is their maintenance and they would be using their own materials. However, Rory asks, will all the materials, products and systems being used in maintenance be at compulsory South African national standards and not cheap non-compliant material we are getting in South Africa, like pipes and fittings, etc.?
Okay.
We can't comment.
We can, yeah. So Rand Water, I know they've got a really good comms as well. So for Rand Water related questions, we are happy to pass this on to them, but we can't comment on their issues. So this briefing is around how we will be affected and what we are doing on our side to ensure that our customers are cushioned and to just provide comfort in terms of what are the plans. But for Rand Water, please do direct your questions to them. Thanks.
And before closing, Cliff from Jacaranda News would like the executive, Acting Crew, to please recap the main message that they would like us to take to the residents regarding this coming maintenance? Just in simple terms, please.
Yeah, I think my colleague Logan has covered a lot of it, in the sense that this is not a crisis. As you saw, there are percentages of 65%, 50%, 83%. So it's a restriction of flow, and therefore some areas will be affected, some areas might not even be affected. And so I think what is important is to throw caution to the wind and try and prepare as if you will be affected. So it's important that we prepare for this. If I was the resident, I would definitely prepare for this and try and have a few buckets of water, if possible, and just for drinking, and then see how it goes. Thank you.
I think if there are no further questions, we'll close the briefing at this point. And if any of you have follow-ups or would like to do one-on-one, please do request from Nolwazi and myself. And then also just to say, this is not the last briefing. As and when required, we will inform residents, particularly during and post the maintenance in terms of how our systems are recovering. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you very much to the colleagues who joined us virtually. Thanks. We will share the